On the battlefield of ancient warfare, some weapons were not just tools of destruction, but harbingers of death and symbols of power. At the heart of this tale lies the Odachi, Japan's sword, too massive to sheathe, too heavy to wield with one hand. Imagine a blade stretching over 3 feet long. It didn't merely cut, it split its foes open, making it a weapon of intimidation and fear. The Odachi was a statement piece, a symbol of the samurai's intent. When a warrior brandished it, he didn't plan to dodge, he planned to destroy. Crafted in the 14th century for mounted warriors, its sheer size was designed to reach horsemen from the ground, delivering lethal strikes. Yet the Odachi transcended mere combat. Some were offerings meant for sacred shrines, too grand to be wielded in battle. Polished by teams of artisans, these monumental swords became bridges between the mortal and divine, where the length of the blade represented the power of the god it honored. As firearms emerged, the Odachi's practical use faded, but its legend lived on, embodied in stories, anime, and martial arts lore. The Odachi was never just a sword. It was a weapon that invited heroism, a blade that became part of the warrior's identity. As the narrative shifts, we encounter the Cythian bow, a weapon of stealth and speed. Picture a silent rider galloping through the vast plains, arrows whispering through the air before striking with deadly precision. These nomadic warriors knew no cities or castles. Their domain was the open field, where they thrived on ambush tactics. The Cythian bow, a short recurve marvel, possessed the power to unleash arrows with furious velocity, even while riding at full speed in any direction. Agility defined their warfare. They circled their enemies, never engaging in hand-to-hand combat, always retreating. Each arrow they fired could be dipped in poison, a cruel twist that brought rot with a single scratch. The Greeks marveled at them, the Persians faltered in attempts to replicate their tactics, and even Rome trembled at their ghostly strikes. Trained from childhood, Scythian warriors became masters of hit and run, their bows extensions of their very beings. With every shot, they changed the rules of warfare, leaving behind the shadows as they struck fear into their enemies. From arrows that pierced the silence like whispers of death, to blades that forever altered the fate of empires. The echoes of their prowess resonate through. Then we meet the Puyo, Rome's smallest yet deadliest blade, a mere hand's length, but a weapon that wielded immense power. In the hands of soldiers and generals alike, it became a silent partner in betrayal. The Puyo wasn't crafted to slice or cut through armor. It was designed for stealth, hiding behind cloaks and in the shadows. On March 15, 44 BCE, this unassuming knife would change the course of history. In a chamber full of senators, a lifetime of ambition led Julius Caesar to his fate. The first stab brought shock, the second seared pain. By the 23rd, the mightiest empire the world had ever known would forever bear the scars of betrayal. The Puyo was the weapon of Brutus and Caesar. It marked the end of one man's reign and ignited a civil war. In its wake, it transformed from mere tool of war to a potent symbol of betrayal, a testament to the fragility of power. Outside the Senate, the Puyo carved its reputation in the trenches of battle. Soldiers fought shoulder to shoulder, where the gladius basked in glory. Yet, it was the Puyo that delivered the final blow. When a soldier fell, the Puyo found its mark. When armor held strong, the Puyo slipped through the cracks. It became the last thing a warrior saw, the last sensation before darkness took hold. Roman versions bore inscriptions of oaths, curses, and names, both of the wielder and the intended victim. From the dagger of a silent assassin to the rapid-fire death machine that reshaped the battle. Next, at number 12, the Chinese repeating crossbow emerged, a harbinger of terror. A single misstep too close, and a flurry of bolts tore through the air, relentless and merciless. No reload, no pause, just an unending cascade of death. This revolutionary weapon demanded not the rhythm of traditional arms, load, aim, fire, repeat, but offered chaos on command. With a single pump action motion, it unleashed 10 bolts in less than 15 seconds. Compact and wooden, it was a lethal companion at close quarters. No waiting for the perfect shot. It fired again and again, transforming hallways and doorways into lethal zones. It was known as the Zhu Nu, named after the legendary strategist Zhuge Liang. Its design likely predates him, yet the association endured. It was more than a weapon. It was a tactical game changer. Peasants with minimal training could defend palace walls, while guards could eliminate ambushes before blades ever drew near. Some bolts dipped in poison turned a mere scratch into a slow, agonizing demise. In skilled hands, it was unstoppable. In the wrong ones, it became a terrifying force of unpredictability. The fear lay not in a single bolt striking true, but in the storm of 12 bolts. While some weapons overwhelmed with speed, others wielded the very elements themselves. Number 11, Archimedes' heat ray brought forth fire from the sun. No thunder, no metal, no smoke, just sunlight harnessed into a deadly weapon. Sailors squinted against the gleaming light, screams echoing as flames engulfed their vessels. Ships smoldered, wood splintered, and the sky shimmered with an ominous heat. This was the ancient death beam devised during the siege of Syracuse in 212 BCE. Roman ships threatened to capture the city, but Syracuse concealed a secret weapon. Archimedes, neither warrior nor soldier, possessed a mind so advanced that his defenses would puzzle engineers for ages. Among his rumored creations was the heat ray, where soldiers held polished bronze shields or mirrors, angled to catch the Mediterranean sun and focus its fury onto enemy ships. The target, sails, oiled hulls, ropes strung taut, caught fire ignited by sunlight alone. Did it work? Historians debate. In the 1970s, a Greek scientist recreated the concept, achieving success at short distances. In 2005, Mythbusters tested it, needing 300 mirrors, yet they charred wood. Not quite a death ray, yet enough to spark intrigue. Even if Archimedes didn't destroy an entire fleet, the psychological impact of a ship bursting into flames without any visible attacker could rattle even the strongest navy. The heat ray stands as a symbol of ingenuity, a reminder that in warfare, the sharpest mind can wield the deadliest weapon. From sunlit flames to explosive roars, we reach number 10, ancient China's thunder crash bomb. First came the hiss, then the roar, followed by a cacophony as the sky split open and men vanished. Shields shattered, horses screamed, and the air itself erupted. This was no divine wrath, but a hand-thrown bomb, so advanced it felt like a glimpse into the future. In a world unaccustomed to explosions, the thunder crash bomb reshaped everything. It didn't merely kill, it disoriented, sowing confusion among seasoned soldiers. Packed inside a hollow iron shell was an early blend of black powder, sealed tightly and hurled skyward. Upon impact, it erupted with force, sending shards of metal flying and morale plummeting. The bomb wasn't fired from a cannon. It unleashed chaos directly upon the enemy. The battlefield transformed into a theater of destruction, where the thunder crash bomb commanded both. A massive projectile soars through the air, launched by trebuchets and slings. It arcs gracefully, a divine message. The crowd watches in awe, hearts racing. The weapon, a symbol of power, flies toward its destined target, unstopped. As it descends, the air crackles with tension. The moment stretches, filled with anticipation and fear. What will befall the city? Finally, it strikes with a thunderous impact, a resounding echo that shakes the ground. The message from the gods is you're not safe even from afar. Imagine being a soldier, your hands gripping swords and arrows, when suddenly the sky tears apart. No warning, no blade, just fire and fragments raining down. Reports from the Song dynasty tell tales of entire formations dissolving into chaos. Horses bolt, men weep. Enemies are not merely wounded, they're shaken to their core. This was not just new technology, it was psychological warfare, wrapped in steel. The Thunder Crash Bomb predates handheld firearms and cannons, paving the way for future destruction. One of the first battlefield explosives in history, it proved effective during the Mongol invasions, turning the tide of battle. Some versions even hissed through the air, amplifying the terror. The Mongols feared across continents. If the Thunder Crash Bomb created chaos, our next weapon was chaos itself. At number 9, the Arumi, a sword that whips and bleeds. At first glance, it resembles a belt, then shifts into a snake-like form. Once unleashed, it sings through the air, not slicing but hissing. It wraps, coils, and bites with ferocity. The Arumi, hailing from southern India, is no ordinary blade. Picture a flexible strip of steel, up to 5 feet long, razor-sharp from end to end. Now imagine multiple strips, sometimes 4 or 5, all attached to a single hilt. In skilled hands, the Arumi doesn't just strike, it unleashes, but wielding it is a perilous endeavor. Training takes years, with missteps resulting in torn skin or worse. To master the Arumi, warriors must grasp not just the weapon, but the rhythm of battle itself. Combat becomes a dance, each swing a performance requiring precision and feel. Forget shields and parries, the Arumi slips past all defenses, unpredictable and lethal. You could hear its ominous hiss and pray it wouldn't end on you. So why craft such a dangerous weapon? In the tight spaces of a battlefield, where numbers matter, the Urumi grants a single fighter the reach of 5. One person can clear an area, cutting down multiple foes before they can close in. If the wielder masters of the Urumi were deemed untouchable in the Kalarippayattu tradition, the ancient martial art from which it originated. These swords were more than just weapons, they were rites of passage. Only the most disciplined, fluid, and fearless warriors could wield one. Because with the Arumi, you weren't just fighting with steel. You battled against something that seemed to possess a mind of its own. From unpredictable whips of steel, we shift to a weapon that embodied terror itself. First, you hear the thunder of hooves pounding the earth like war drums. Then, a scream, sharp and sudden, cut short. What just passed wasn't merely a chariot, it was a blade on wheels. The wheels didn't just roll, they spun with curved steel sides jutting out, arms of death slicing through men like wheat. This ancient war machine didn't just charge into battle, it harvested it, used by Persians, Seleucids, and even Britons against Rome. Scythe chariots thrust a 2-wheeled platform pulled by horses at full speed. These chariots were designed to cut, maim, and scatter infantry lines. They didn't break formations, they shredded them. These weren't weapons of precision, they were instruments of panic. Scythe chariots were shock weapons, crashing into the densest parts of enemy formations, creating confusion and chaos. Once the charge began, there was no stopping it. If the horses stayed on course, bodies would fall. If they panicked, the chariot would care not who it cut, friend, foe, or field. At the Battle of Gala in 331 BCE, the Persians unleashed scythe chariots against Alexander the Great. But Alexander, always strategic, opened lanes in his ranks, letting the chariots pass harmlessly through. He then countered from the sides. This genius move marked the weapon's decline. Scythe chariots were terrifying until they weren't. Once armies learned to adapt, to move, part, or spike the ground in preparation, the shock faded. A weapon built on surprise lost its edge. Yet, for a time, the sight of a scythe chariot racing toward you, blades glinting in the sun, horses frothing at the mouth, could shake. From the brutal motion of scythe chariots, we turned to a weapon that focused that terror into a single devastating strike. At number 7, the Khopesh, Egypt's crescent of carnage. It didn't just slash, it ripped apart. The edge curved, caught ribs, and pulled sideways. One jerk of the arm, and the enemy's shield flew left, exposing their torso just in time for the second swing to land deep in their gut. Blood didn't pour. It slid down bronze curves, designed to hook, tear, and leave men screaming in the sand. This Egyptian weapon didn't just kill. Before broadswords and long swords, the Egyptians forged the khopesh. Part sword, part sickle, it embodied violence. Unlike straight blades, the khopesh was built to bend around defenses. If you blocked it, it caught your shield. If you ran, it hooked your legs. If you stood still, you lost something vital. The terror lay not only in its damage, but also in who wielded it. Ramses II, one of history's most powerful pharaohs, was often depicted with a khopesh. When a pharaoh poses with a weapon, it signifies power, not mere show. The khopesh became sacred, buried in tombs and placed in the hands of gods, displayed as a relic of divine force. To hold one was to command. To face one was something else entirely. The khopesh was designed to disarm, leave enemies bleeding, and instill terror. Its curved shape was not just clever, it was brutal. Unlike straight swords that glanced off armor, the khopesh grabbed and tore through it. Its short length made it ideal for close combat, where there was no room for hesitation and from the devastating curves of the khopesh, we shift to a weapon that broke ground and empires. At number 6, the Basilica Cannon, the gun that shattered an empire. The earth shook, not from hooves or drums, but from something deeper, something new. A thunderclap rolled across Constantinople, followed by a flash and an explosion that split stone like kindling. This weapon was massive, destructive. It didn't just fire at a city, it fired the open. In 1453, the walls of Constantinople had stood for over a millennium, withstood Romans, Persians, Huns, invaders who came and failed. But then came maimed II, with a weapon the world had never seen. Built by a Hungarian engineer named Orban, the basilica was no ordinary cannon. 27 feet long, it fired stone balls over 600 pounds each, requiring 60 oxen to move. It wasn't a siege weapon, it was a statement. Each shot took hours to reload but didn't need speed. It had terror. The thunder could be heard miles away. Stone balls crashed into ramparts, turning proud defenses. Witnesses spoke of boulders flattening towers, cracking walls that had stood for a millennium. The basilica was not just a tool of conquest, but a symbol of a new era where gunpowder eclipsed cavalry and cannons replaced castles. After Constantinople fell, it was clear no wall could protect you now. The age of medieval fortresses was ending. The age of explosive power had begun. Yet this beast came with a price. It required constant cooling or risked cracking. Its barrel warped with repeated use, and adjusting it took teams of engineers. It wasn't nimble nor efficient, but it worked. And when it did, the city that had stood for 1,000 years, from cannons that crumbled stone to blades that turned battlefields into altars, we enter our top 5. At number 5, the Macuahuitl, the obsidian chainsaw. You don't hear it coming, just the wind, then snap, a sound like splintering bone. Suddenly, a riderless horse stumbles past, its neck cleanly sliced open in one swing. That wasn't steel or a sword, it was something stranger and sharper. This weapon made conquistadors rethink everything they knew about war. The Macuahuitl was the signature weapon of the Aztec Empire, a wooden paddle embedded with obsidian blades, sharp as razors, gleaming like black glass. To European invaders, it looked primitive until they witnessed its devastating power. Obsidian doesn't bend, doesn't dull, it shatters. But until then, it cut with a precision sharper than surgical steel. Eyewitnesses described warriors, Spanish soldiers who survived Aztec ambushes, spoke of wounds that didn't bleed at first. The cuts were so clean, the skin didn't even realize it was open. Yet the Mako was not solely about destruction. It was steeped in ritual. Aztec warriors didn't always kill immediately. Their goal was capture, to bleed, to intimidate. Often, the macuahuitl was used not to deliver death, but to injure and disarm, leaving enemies helpless for later sacrifice. For the Aztecs, warfare was both a battle and an offering. Their weapon of choice reflected this strange duality, beautiful, terrifying, and deeply spiritual. It wasn't just a club, it was a symbol of strength, sacrifice, and from blades of ritual horror to engines of pure blunt force, our next weapon rained death from a distance. At number 4, catapults. Death from afar begins with silence, then a thunk, a jolt through the ground. You look up and a shadow looms overhead. It's not a bird nor a cloud, it's a 90-pound stone screaming through the air. By the time you realize it, it's already too late. This was the ancient world's artillery cannon, not merely a tool of destruction, but a message launched from across the horizon. Catapults instilled terror, not just for their impact, but because you never used by civilizations from Greece to Rome, catapults marked a turning point in warfare. Battles were no longer confined to close quarters. Distance offered no safety. Catapults hurled rocks, spears, flaming pitch, and in the darkest moments, diseased corpses intended to spread panic and plague. The power behind a catapult wasn't muscle, it was math. Roman engineers calculated angles, wind, and weight. They used torsion, twisted ropes of sinew and hair to unleash devastating force. Some machines, like the ballista, fired bolts the size of telephone poles with pinpoint precision. Others, like the onager, kicked backward with such force they had to be wheeled into dirt trenches. The Romans didn't just invent war machines, they standardized them. 10 catapults per legion, always ready, always aimed at your city. But the true weapon wasn't the stone, it was the waiting. Sieges could last months, with soldiers on the wall never knowing when the next strike would come. You'd hear the creak of tightening ropes, then silence, then crack. Sometimes it wasn't even aimed at you. It was aimed at the market, the temple, your home. It declared, "We don't need to climb your walls, we'll break your spirit." If catapults broke wills from afar, our next weapon shattered formations up close with thunderous living force. Stomping into number 3, war elephants, the thunder that walked. You hear them before you see them, a low rumble, the ground shaking. Then the mist parts, revealing not a chariot or cavalry charge, but a towering creature covered in armor and dripping with war paint, with eyes that don't blink and tusks like spears. It carries an entire archer squad on its back. The most terrifying in an age when the average soldier stood just over 5 feet tall, the arrival of a 6-ton elephant, armored and raging, was divine terror incarnate. Used in warfare as early as the 4th century BCE, war elephants became the ancient world's equivalent of an armored tank, combining muscle, fury, and intelligence. Civilizations from India, Persia, and later Carthage employed them with devastating psychological effect. Imagine being in formation, tusks swinging, one swipe could crush a line, one misstep could end 50 lives. These weren't mere beasts, they were weapons platforms. Some carried towers called howdahs, holding archers or javelin throwers. Others were trained to trample formations, gore horses, or even scoop up enemies with their trunks. The most famous use involved Hannibal crossing the Alps with elephants to invade Rome. A feat so bold, so absurd, it remains one of the greatest logistical gambits in military. At the Battle of Heracle, pews of Epirus unleashed war elephants on Roman troops for the first time. The Romans broke ranks, horses panicked, soldiers fled. It worked until Rome adapted. But there lay a terrifying flaw. Elephants are intelligent and easily frightened. Roman commanders began using fire, loud noises, and specially designed spears to scare them. Some battles ended not with elephants trampling the enemy, but with them turning. The most horrifying twist involved fire pigs. Yes, pigs soaked in tar and set ablaze, released under the elephant's feet. The squeals and flames sent elephants into uncontrollable stampedes. Imagine your war machine becoming your worst enemy because someone lit a pig on fire. Speaking of fire and terror, our next weapon didn't just burn, it burned on water, an unquenchable nightmare. At number 2, Greek fire, the weapon that... Imagine this. You're on a wooden ship in the Aegean Sea, a calm morning that suddenly erupts into chaos. The enemy approaches, not with arrows or catapults, but with flames that sail across the sea. Stick to your ship and it won't extinguish. Your crew panics and buckets of water do nothing. The fire hisses, climbs, swirls. The sea itself seems to ignite. This isn't just an attack, it's a nightmare. The ancient world's version of napalm. Deadly, mysterious, and unstoppable. First unleashed by the Byzantines in the 7th century, Greek fire was more than just a weapon. It was military sorcery. Projected from siphons, bronze tubes mounted on warships, it burst forth like a dragon's breath. Once lit, it clung to surfaces. Water couldn't quench it, and it burned brighter on water. Eyewitnesses described enemy sailors leaping overboard only to find the sea ablaze. The truth remains elusive. The recipe for Greek fire was a closely guarded military secret, known only to a handful of historians speculate it could have been made from naphtha, pine resin, quicklime, or even petroleum, but no one can say for sure. Its formula vanished entirely with the fall of Byzantium, disappearing like a magician's final trick. This only added to the fear. If you were an enemy of the Byzantines, you weren't just facing fire. You were facing something you couldn't comprehend or escape. And now, the moment you've been waiting for, our ultimate weapon, not for its raw body count, but for mind-bending psychological. It begins with a scream, not human but worse, a high-pitched, panicked, agonizing cry. Then comes the smoke, the fire, and chaos. Elephants, the tanks of the ancient world, recoil in fear, charging back through their own armies, flattening everything in their path, not because of swords or arrows, but because of pigs, burning, screaming pigs. War pigs weren't designed to kill directly, they shattered nerves. Ancient armies discovered that elephants, powerful and seemingly invincible, not just any sound, but the squealing of pigs. Generals drenched pigs in oil or pitch, set them ablaze, and released them beneath enemy elephants. The animals panicked, commanders lost control, lines collapsed without a single sword swing. Ancient writers documented this not as myth, but as military reality. Even cities like Megara reportedly kept pigs on standby for fear of elephant attacks during sieges. It wasn't the pigs themselves, it was what they did to the minds of soldiers, uncontrollable fear, stampeding death, unleashed by something no army would expect. There were weapons that crushed, weapons that sliced, but this weapon humiliated. A tactic so strange, brutal, and unthinkable, it became unforgettable. The concept alone feels insane, and it worked. Ancient warfare wasn't just about steel and strength. It was about imagination. The Kopish curved to kill, Greek fire refused to die, obsidian cut like silence, and sometimes terror squealed. History teaches us that fear has always been the sharpest blade. In the ancient world, the goal wasn't just to win. It was to break your enemy's spirit before